Hello everyone. Today we want to talk about how to prepare for a debate competition. That is what you're supposed to do before a debate competition and during the debate competition, right? So I think the very first thing we need to understand is that you don't have a specific time to prep for a tournament. Everywhere outside the debate room is your prep room. So whether you're in the classroom, you're in the market, you are in the bathroom, anywhere you can get access to information is a place where you can prepare for a debate. You are scrolling through your social media handles, you're seeing pieces of information, and you're looking at how you can, put them together in the debate room to form an argument or support an argument and all. The very best way to prepare as a debater is to always use everything as a tool for preparation. So there really isn't any, stereotyped way for you to prepare before a debate competition. Like I said before, you have to have this at the back of your mind that everywhere outside the debate room is your prep room. Other things that we can do to specifically help us to do well with debating. The very first things we can do to prepare for debate is what we call general principles. Right? There are general principles of life, there are general principles of debating, there are general principles of argumentation, and these are things that I'm going to be running us through in this particular video. The very first principle that I would like us to talk about is the principle of choice, the principle of decision. To check different debate motions, right? Most times people are always obligated to run arguments about how people should make choices independent of external influences and all. First thing then to ask yourself is, at what point should an individual's right or ability to make choices be limited? So you can come in different debate motions, like you should limit people's access to social media, probably you should regret the use of things like TikTok and all of that. All of these things are revolving about people's decision or choice to engage in a particular action and all of that. What happens when you begin to think about these things is that before you go for debate competition, you're wrapping your head around choice. At what point should an individual choice be limited, and at what point should an individual be able to make choices without limitation, right? So I think you also need to consider things like, when is an individual rational enough to make choices? So the argument you can run in that line could be, that someone who is already 18 years rational enough to make decisions, someone who is safe and of a sound mind and healthy is rational enough to make decisions. You can also flip the argument to say things like, someone who is sick and is maybe suffering from a terminal sickness is not rational enough to make decisions. People who are under pressure are not rational enough to make decisions, and this pressure could be financial pressure, emotional pressure, could be threat. Particular arguments on choice can cut across different arguments. They can cut across arguments on euthanasia, whether a patient has the ability to make choice to allow his life to be ended by the medical practitioner. They can also cut across arguments around prostitution, whether people who are make informed choices to become prostitutes. You can run arguments like, these guys are not informed because they're under financial pressure, and you cannot judge them based on the decisions they make under that particular kind of pressure. Our understanding of things like choices makes it very easy for us to run lots of arguments and all that, right? So the next thing also to do when you are preparing for a debate is to research people's incentives or organizational incentives. Incentives are, what propels an individual to make a particular decision. For instance, government has a particular incentive that incentivizes it in quotes to take decisions about budgeting, about policies and all of that. Individuals have different incentives. Women have incentives. Family, children, parents, people have different incentives that motivate them and propel them to take different decisions that they take in status quo. Your ability to interrogate those incentives even before you arrive at the debate competition is going to give you an edge over any other thing. The reason why this is true is because most debate competitions are won on your ability to characterize why an actor is probable to take a particular decision, or why he is less probable to take a particular decision, or why he's more incentivized to take a particular decision, or why he's less incentivized to take a particular decision. For instance, you see arguments on how the government would, ban organized religion, right, in Nigeria, right? So you're going to maybe interrogate the incentives of religious institutions to live out or to operate in a particular society. You're also going to interrogate the incentive of government, to protect the rights of the citizens and all of that. You see that every human being that takes a particular action Every government that enacts a policy, every individual that supports or does not support a particular policy has an incentive or a reason why he does that. So before you come for a debate, you should look at different stakeholders, right? Look at the government. What makes the government make the decisions government make? I think most times the incentives governments usually have to make certain decisions is because one, they already have the mandate of the people, so people vote them in, etc. So it then necessarily means that they are incentivized to protect the interests of those that voted them in. But I think that the biggest incentives government has to like make most of the decisions it makes in status quo is because of the incentive to want to retain power. What that means is that someone who runs for first time in office is incentivized to do things that can please the people because he wants to run again for the next term. Most political parties, even when they are running for second term, want to do things that would make people happy so that their political party will continually, be on the seat of power and all of that. That is an incentive of a political party in a democratic setting. We can also interrogate children's incentive. What are children's incentive? What are parental incentives? I think parental incentives largely is the obligation they have for their children, backlash they're going to get in society where they do not train their children well. The fact that when they live and grow old, they don't have children who are reasonable enough to take care of them in their old age, incentivizes them to like treat those children well. Ability to understand incentives is something that is really, really important when running your debate or preparing for a debate. The next thing then we need to talk about is what we call big government versus small government in debate. Big government means government has an overarching power over individuals, right? Over citizens. And small government means government has limited power over what citizens do. So a simple example would be when government decides to ban TikTok. I think there was a time Nigerian government banned Twitter within Nigeria and all of that. That is big government. Government infringing on people's access to freedom of information, etc. Small government would be when the government does not have so much influence on what people do. Things like government, substituting things like abortion fees, right? That means the government does no longer have, that so much influence on people or telling people not to abort, but they are even going a long way to, even allow them to maximize that ability to make those decisions without interfering and all debate. Then there's what we call middle government. Government is instances where government wants to control what people do, but cannot totally do that. So it introduces a means to disincentivize people from taking that particular action. An example would be what Nigerian government does on cigarettes, right? Believe government wants to ban smoking of cigarettes in Nigeria, but they can't do that. But then they disincentivize people from having access to cigarettes by writing things like the Federal Ministry of Health wants that smokers are liable to die young. That is to say, government wants you to stop, cannot stop you, but is trying to stop you from actually getting that without directly influencing you or stopping you. So what that means is that a rational person can pick up a cigarette pack and read that and will be disincentivized to want to continue smoking at all. So you now begin to check in what instances can I introduce a big government argument, a small government argument, a middle government argument. Another example for middle government could be when maybe government wants people to stop importing rice, right? But government cannot outrightly stop importation of rice. What does it do? It now increases the tax duties or import duties people pay at the border when they are importing rice. The next thing and final thing to do on preparation before debate is to realize that your judges are seen as average intelligence voters, right? What that means is that assume they don't know what you're talking about, so they're going to judge you based on the information you give them. So that still goes back to what I said earlier, that every time outside the debate room is your prep time. So at the time where you are outside the debate room, you can read up on what's happening in different parts of the world. You can read up on what's happening in the sports world. I heard Chelsea, something is happening to Chelsea right now, and I really do not know. But you can read up on all of those things, right? Because the time is going to come in a debate where you need all of those information, and what is going to stand you out in debate is the peculiar knowledge you have on these particular happenings around the world, especially in impromptu motions where you have the same access to information and you cannot even access things like AI, or maybe have access to your teachers. Also, when you read as much as possible, it becomes a lot easier. When I was growing up in debates, I used to read things like newspapers. I'm not sure people read newspapers these days, but I think there are digital newspapers that you can read online. You can also watch news, listen to interviews, listen to podcasts. These things are going to help you, do well in debate. Other things could be watching debate videos. I think what makes great debaters is when they watch others debate. So you can look out for what Who's Debating Championship, look out for their out rounds, maybe their grand finals, or watch quality debates. You can look out for World Universities Debating Championship. You can look out for European Universities Debating Championship. You can look out for African Schools Debating Championship. There are lots of debate tournaments you can search on YouTube, and you can increase your repertoire of knowledge when it comes to debating. And then I trust you do well when you come to Nation Bootcamp 3.0. Okay, so I think the next thing then we talk about is during the debate. What makes you stand out during the debate? I think what makes you stand out during debate tournament is your ability to give structure to your speech, right? So I think what most debaters do, they just come and then they just begin to throw lumps of arguments, scatter shots, no mechanization, no structure. They just drop those arguments and then they leave it to the judges, and most times judges lose track, and sometimes you say, oh, I'm supposed to win this round because I said this thing, and the judges genuinely did not hear you say them. Okay, so what you do is when you give structure to your debate, it makes it a lot easier for you to win that particular round. So what is the structure going to look like? Identify the problem that the debate is trying to solve. Okay, show how that particular motion is going to worsen or increase that problem. When you're able to show how it's going to do that, don't give why your alternative is like better in that particular regard. When you raise an argument, show why that argument is important and show why that argument is true. Maybe in another video you're going to throw more light on how to properly structure your argument so they can give clarity to your judges when you debate with them and all. I think to this end, I would advise you to keep watching our YouTube channel. We're going to be dropping a lot of videos around what to expect from you at the Spark Nation 3.0. But I think that when you look or listen to most of the videos, or you listen to all of the things I've said right now, it will be a lot easier for you to be prepared ahead of time. Because this year we are doing at West and Central Africa, and people are coming from the different countries with different levels of preparation. So you can show your level of unpreparedness or show your level of preparedness depending on how much you utilize the information that has been shared in this video. Thank you very much, and see you in the next video.